Recently, I attempted to complete every single collection in Stardew Valley, but with a twist. I had to complete them in order. This challenge spanned over 4 different videos, from the shipping, cooking, minerals and artifacts, and finally the dreaded fishing collection, each with its own issues and struggles. So in this video, I've combined the entire In Order saga into one single movie. So if you want to see how it all unfolded from start to finish, this is the complete journey. So get comfy, grab some popcorn, and before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Although that's enough talking, let's begin. So here we are on day 1. I decided to choose the standard farm layout for this challenge. Sure, other layouts such as the Four Corners farm or even the Forest farm might make things a bit easier, but since I was so limited by what I could ship for the early parts of this challenge, I didn't see much point. I began the challenge as you normally would do, by planting the parsnips and clearing an area in front of my farmhouse. The first items on the shipping list were the spring forageables. The first one in line was the horseradish, which I found in the mountains alongside a leek and dandelion, only leaving the daffodil. In the cindersap forest, I came along the final piece of spring forage, along with some spring onions, which I wouldn't actually be able to ship for a long while. I chose to keep the forageables and not ship them straight away, and overnight I made it to level 1 foraging. Ever since researching this challenge, one thing was certain, that gold was going to be an issue. I will be trying to conserve it as best as possible, so that meant using mixed seeds and other forms of getting free seeds, such as from the museum. My main strategy for this challenge was simple really, try and complete the community centre as fast as possible, with the limited items I could ship. So that meant the first few days of this challenge was spent fishing to get all of the ones I needed. On the 5th of spring, my parsnips were ready to collect, which also gave me the 5th item in the shipping collection. The final item I had to find in the first batch of the shipping items was the cave carrot, which I managed to find fairly easy during my first mining trip. An essential part of this challenge, taking 5 years or 2 years, will be how lucky I get with the travelling cart, which could save me tens of thousands of gold, although it didn't sell anything useful this time. I did spend my first bits of gold on a green bean starter, as it was practically impossible to get one through mixed seeds. Although it was at this point of the challenge where it took a terrifying turn. So far this challenge seemed, well, quite easy, until I saw what the next items I needed were. The cactus fruit and a coconut, which can only be found at the desert, or at least once the desert's been unlocked. This will require us to spend a total of 42,500 gold to finish the vault bundle, which doesn't seem too bad, until you realise that we can only sell the 4 spring forageables, parsnips, and cave carrots. So yeah, get ready for the hardest part of this entire challenge, the quest for the desert. If I was going to make anywhere close to 42,500 gold, I'd have to have a plan, and honestly, my plan was using special orders and the help wanted quests to make gold. The only real moneymaker would be parsnips, but growing them would just be a terrible idea, as each seed packet costs 20 gold and then sells for 48 gold at its base quality, which only gives you around 20 gold a profit, which means on average we would have to grow 1,517 parsnips just to get enough gold. Yeah, I know. For the rest of the first spring, I spent it growing and collecting as many community centre items as possible to get that ticked off, making sure to complete as many help wanted quests along the way. I did try and grow as many parsnips as I could afford, as once spring was over, I'd be unable to make any more gold outside of cave carrots and help wanted quests. I also wanted to reach the bottom of the mines as soon as possible to make life as much easier going into the summer. I decided to purchase the backpack upgrade and found myself some cool shades to wear. What was even better is on spring 20th I completed the boiler room and unlocked the minecarts, and then the next day I made it to floor 120 and collected the skull key. I did also have to upgrade my axe to copper to help me mine hardwood stumps to complete the construction bundle. And to wrap up the season, I had a huge sprinkler set up on the farm, ready to help growth in the summer. Of course, throughout the spring, I had accumulated a few useful items from the travelling cart, such as animal products, but I'm still yet to get a truffle or red cabbage seed. To begin the summer season, I had 5,200 gold, and made myself a much more organised sprinkler layout before heading to Pierre's to buy myself a tomato, blueberry and hop seed, all of which I had to buy as I couldn't get them through mixed seeds. Since I couldn't make any more gold now through the shipping bin, I chose to build myself a coop to begin housing chickens. I would need a large egg of both varieties, alongside normal eggs for the shipping collection. As normal, I allocated the first part of the season to catching as many of the new seasonal fish as possible, and I managed to complete the summer foraging bundle with relative ease. On the night of summer 4, I made it to level 5 fishing, although since I couldn't sell the fisher perk would practically be irrelevant, so I chose Trapper. At the travelling cart, I was offered a duck egg, which I really should have taken looking back, but I chose to save my gold just in case a truffle popped up on the Sunday. But unfortunately, come Sunday, there wasn't a truffle, or anything else of use, so yeah, that was a mistake. I did however donate the final item to complete the exotic foraging bundle, and a poppy to the chef's bundle, and I also wrapped up the lake fishing bundle as well. Over at Marnie's, I chose to buy 2 chickens, which can provide me with both variations of eggs, which come up fairly soon in the shipping collection, as I just mentioned. I took some resources to Robin's to build me a handy silo, which doesn't actually cost that much gold, and would allow me to collect hay for my vast amounts of animals I'll be needing later down the line. That was really the main goal until we unlocked the desert, future preparation, collecting as many shipping items as I could, and storing them all ready for when I need them. I did have to make a quick trip to Pierre's to buy some wheat seeds, as I did need 10 pieces of wheat for the fodder bundle. Talking of future preparation, I used the chair to access the secret woods to begin collecting hardwood. I will need 200 pieces of it to fix up the boat to Ginger Island, which, as you will find out, we will need to do sooner rather than later. I was able to finish the summer crops bundle and reach level 5 farming that same night. On the 16th, the annual Green Rain event had arrived, which would be a great source of mixed seeds for the fall season. I chose to expand my tree farm today, planting a load of mahogany trees, for the hardwood of course. By the end of the season, I was still growing some summer forageables and corn, and even had an orange and pomegranate tree growing from the prize machine. After such a busy month of completing Help Wanted quests, we were up to a total of 8,000 gold, and yet was still so far away from that 42,500 gold mark. But don't worry, I have a big plan for that, which starts, well, right now. But before that, I planted all the mixed seeds I'd bought going into the fall season, and I bought a bok choy, yam, amaranth, cranberry seeds from Pierre's, which were yet again all impossible to get from mixed seeds. I also chose to buy 20 pumpkin seeds in order to get the 5-star gold quality ones needed to finish the pantry. On the 2nd of fall, Mayor Lewis and Robin had constructed a special orders board, which was filled with quests, which were going to be my main moneymaker from now on. Well, at least until spring rolled around once again. I picked up Robin's Resource Rush, which required me to collect 1,000 pieces of stone in only 1 week. In the evening, I managed to catch the eel, leaving only one last bundle, the specialty fish bundle, until I had completed my first community centre room. Of course, the only fish I was missing was the sandfish, which we would have to wait until the desert was unlocked to complete. I spent the next few days inside the lower levels of the normal mines to collect all the stone for Robin, and then I headed over there to ask her to build me a barn. Once again, both milk and large milk come up fairly soon in the shipping collection, so I was making sure I was prepared for later. Looking back on the challenge, I could have just saved my gold all on the vault bundle, but my huge plans in the spring would mean I would never have money problems. Stick around to find out what they are. And no, it's not farming for cave carrots. Since I had the gold, I chose to upgrade my pickaxe to copper, as once I reached the Skull Caverns, it would be impossible for me to mine anything with just the normal one. The new week's special order was Fragments of the Past from Gunther, which tasked me to collect 100 pieces of bone in only 1 week. It was also blackberry season, which gave me a great amount of energy inside the mines. I gave Linus his blackberry basket back, which gave me a decent amount of gold for doing so, and I wrapped up the special order and collected 4,000 more gold. An issue with this challenge, which I didn't expect, was the storage aspect. Since I couldn't sell anything, I had no choice but to store everything in chests, leading to having so many chests, more than you'll ever need. After the fall crops had finished growing, I could complete yet another bundle. And I could pick up another special order from Robin, which tasked me to collect 80 pieces of hardwood, which wouldn't be too much of an issue since the stumps in the secret woods regrow every single day. I did choose to participate in the Stardew Valley Fair in order to collect a few useful prizes such as the Star Drop and the prize ticket. I'm still checking the travelling carts every single week, hoping for a truffle or red cabbage, although the reason I haven't been mentioning them is because they were garbage. That was until the 26th of fall, which sold a sandfish for a fairly cheap price, so I just couldn't resist picking it up, which meant now I could complete the fish tank bundle inside the community centre. Unfortunately, this would only unlock panning. That isn't too useful, but I will be needing the pan on Ginger Island. To wrap up a productive fall, I attended Spirit's Eve, made my way through the maze, and collected my golden pumpkin. So the winter is here, and to be honest is one of the most boring seasons in this challenge, so we won't stick around for too long. Coming out of the fall season, we're on 7,000 gold, and my main goal of this season is to finish up the community centre and prepare for the upcoming spring. My big plan for the spring is to cover my farm with sprinklers and plant a crazy amount of parsnips, which I can ship off to make enough gold to afford the vault bundle, and anything else I wanted in the future. As always, I managed to find Krobus inside the small bush by the playground and collected the magnifying glass. I was then able to wrap up the crafts room by donating the rest of the winter forage. This will unlock the quarry, which is quite useful. I wasn't wasting any time before laying out the new area for the sprinklers to go. This time, I'm using quality ones. The travelling cart did sell some useful items today, such as the duck feather, although I did manage to get one fairly early on in the challenge. Throughout the season, I was completing yet more special orders and as many help wanted quests as possible, managing to reach 14,000 gold around winter 12. The quarry had been unlocked for a while now, and I'd finally made my way through it to collect the golden scythe. I chose to buy some goat's cheese from the travelling cart today, since that would allow me to finish the artisan bundle, leaving only one bundle until the pantry was complete. The pantry was going to be quite important in this challenge because it unlocks the greenhouse. This allows me to plant any crops I had missed, any season, at any time. By the end of the season, this was the giant sprinkler layout ready for the new season, and even though I didn't get a red cabbage seed, it wouldn't be too bad as Pierre would now sell it as we're in year 2. Kent was at my door this morning letting me know that he's moving back into town, which signalled the start of the second year in the valley. And there was no time to waste. I wasn't going to have another boring year like last one. I went straight to clearing the debris that had formed overnight and began hoeing the land ready for a load of parsnips. At Pierre's I picked up 360 seeds, which I didn't choose to water today as there was just so many of them. I let the sprinklers do that in the morning. So that's exactly how I spent the majority of the spring season, planting and harvesting more parsnips and shipping them for gold. I chose to pick up a special order which required me to ship 100 green beans, which I did try and plant, until I realised that I couldn't ship green beans, so that was stupid. Lucky for me, the travelling cart finally sold a red cabbage, which meant I could finish the dye bundle and receive a seed maker. By the 15th of spring, we were up to 23,000 gold, and then by the 18th, I received a large egg and a large milk from my animals to complete the pantry, unlocking the greenhouse. I chose to buy a caviar from the travelling cart as well, since it was an item I needed to ship, and would be one of the more challenging ones to get hold of, as I would need sturgeon roe, which would require either building a fish pond, or getting lucky with roe after reading Jewels of the Sea. Inside the greenhouse I chose to grow some crops that I'll be needing later, such as the strawberry and 2 sweet gemberries. One sweet gemberry for shipping, and the other for the star drop in the secret woods. Probably for the first time ever, I used the cookout kit to make the maki roll, which would save me upgrading the house. I'm sure Pierre won't mind me just leaving this here. Later. But finally, after a long time of planting and collecting parsnips, I finally had enough gold to finish the vault bundle, which would open up the entire rest of the challenge. Or that is what I thought. I did decide to spend the rest of my gold on even more parsnip seeds, since I still had the time for at least one more harvest before the summer season. I gave the wizard the prismatic jelly, giving me 5,000 gold, which 500 of I'd need to get a bus ticket. So I got my inventory ready, filled with bombs and food, ready to tackle the skull caverns. Just before that, I stopped at the desert trader to trade some omni geodes for some warp totems, and spicy eels and triple shot espressos. But more importantly, I managed to find the coconut and cactus fruit, which would finally allow me to progress in the shipping collection. Whilst I was here, I chose to tackle the skull caverns a little bit, and luckily I found a dinosaur floor on floor 21, and I got 1 dinosaur egg, which would be a great find as it would save me searching for one later. And to be honest, there was no better feeling getting back home and shipping off the coconut and cactus fruit, finally. But to be honest, that was only the beginning of our struggles. The next item in the shipping collection was the banana. Yep, already. This meant I had to travel to Ginger Island, find myself a banana tree before I could continue, which will probably be even harder than the quest for the desert. I was going to need the gold going forward into the summer season, so I spent every ounce of gold I had on more parsnip seeds, which I could continue to plant inside the greenhouse, giving me at least a little bit of gold going into the rest of the year. For the summer season, I planted a full field of summer forageables since I didn't have any gold for anything else. To reach Ginger Island, I would have to fix up the old boat back in Willie's shop, but you can only access it after the community centre is restored. But the only item I was still missing was a truffle, which meant we either had to get a deluxe barn and then buy a pig, or just hope the travelling cart would give me one. But to be honest, I just had to wait for the travelling cart. There was no way I could afford to get all of those upgrades. Whilst I was waiting for the travelling cart to sell me a truffle, I continued to collect even more items ready to ship once the shipping collection opened up, and I continued to check the cart every Friday and Sunday. Around the middle of the summer, I had a fully upgraded coop with the relevant animals levelling up inside to give me the correct items I needed to ship. Mainly rabbits for the rabbit's feet, and ducks for the duck egg and the duck feather. On the 26th of summer, it must have been my lucky day, as I collected a rabbit's foot inside the coop, and the travelling cart sold me a truffle, which meant I could donate it to the community centre and fully complete it. This meant that Willie will show me around his boat in the morning. That was when I remembered I needed 5 iridium bars to repair the boat as well, and I hadn't even been back to the Skull Caverns since the first time I went there. So I got all of my gear ready, and after a giant run in the Skull Caverns, I had enough iridium ore. And I actually did manage to get quite far down, all the way to floor 58. Whilst I was here, I found a prismatic shard, that I returned to the desert to receive the Galaxy Sword, just in time for Ginger Island. I did make sure to check whether I needed a prismatic shard to ship, but don't worry, you don't. So, the fall had arrived, but I had one goal in mind: repair the boat, which is exactly what I did. So that meant in the morning, I could travel to Ginger Island and begin the hunt for the banana. I prepared my inventory with the usual island resources, such as the seeds for the gourmand frog, slingshot for the golden walnut, and a bomb to free Professor Snail. I would actually need access to Mr. Key's walnut room later on for some shipping items. This meant I would have to collect at least 100 golden walnuts whilst I'm here as well. Once I arrived, I did the usual golden walnut collecting, and I managed to unlock the island farm, where I planted the seeds, and picked up the war memento from the strange lady, which I could take back home with me to get even more golden walnuts. Quite annoyingly, there are only a few ways to get a banana sapling. One way is from golden coconuts, another by trading 5 dragon teeth at the island trader, or completing the giant animal bones in Professor Snail's field office. I did try my luck at the memory puzzle to get some more golden walnuts, but you lot know how much I hate this, so I just left immediately. Back home, I began trading the items to receive the pirate's locket from Willie, which gave me even more golden walnuts. For the first time, I ventured into the volcano, where I managed to find my first dragon tooth, and funnily enough, you don't actually need to ship it. So if I could get my hands on 4 more, I would be able to trade it for a banana sapling. I did have to spend a lot of gold though opening geodes at Clint's. This was because I would need access to the sewers to buy myself a void egg, and alongside void mayonnaise for the shipping collection. The only other way to get void eggs would be from the witch event, but it's just so rare, it's just much easier to do it this way anyway. On the 7th of fall, I finally had 5 dragon teeth, which I could take to the island trader to get myself a banana sapling. Unfortunately, it would be at least 28 days until it would produce any bananas, so I would now have to allocate 28 days to collect every single last item I needed. Whilst I had the time now, I went through each item on the blank shipping collection and moved it to a new set of chests called the shipping chests, which contained every item I needed to ship off. In all honesty, most of the shipping items were fairly easy and simple. It was only a few rare and strange items that would make this troublesome. One of those rare items was actually the ancient fruit, and I still hadn't managed to get myself a seed yet. So I took some monster musk to the lower levels of the mines to get me one. I managed to find 2 actually. Since we were waiting for the tree to grow, I began the hunt for the next challenging item, the ostrich egg. I would class the ostrich egg as probably one of the rarest items in the game. It requires you to reach the end of the game to get one really. They can either be found inside the volcano or inside journal scraps. So that meant every single day I was back inside the volcano searching more chests and blowing up more and more rocks hoping to find it. Luckily, after a week of searching, I managed to find one inside a volcano chest. I didn't need to ship ostrich mayo however, so I could just keep this one safe, ticking off another hard item. I also finally took on that horrible memory puzzle, which I did manage to complete after a lot of time, and it gave me enough golden walnuts to enter Mr. Key's walnut room. The reason I needed to unlock this room was for the radioactive ore and radioactive bar in the final pages of the shipping collection. Radioactive ore can only be found during the dangerous mines, which can only be activated during the Mr. Key quest. I didn't have danger in the deep today, however, but when I do, I'll be able to get the 2 more rare items. On the 14th of fall, the travelling cart sold me another truffle, which was just perfect as I needed 1 more for shipping, and I didn't really want to have to buy a pig for it. But annoyingly, it would turn out I need 2 truffles, one for truffle oil and the other for shipping. There's always something with this challenge. I pretty much had every item ready to ship off now, apart from a few tougher ones, such as the truffle, the radioactive ore and bar, banana, and a class agent fruit in there as well. But after one final last scan through the shipping collection, I found something I completely forgot about. The Mystic Syrup. This single item turned out to be the longest one for me to get, as the only way to get it is through tapping a mystic tree, which can only be grown from a mystic sapling, which can only be unlocked after reaching level 10 in all skills, and then reaching at least level 1 inside the mastery cave. This meant I had to fish for days on end to upgrade my fishing skill, chop trees for eternity to get level 10 foraging, and to be honest, I'm just glossing over it right now, but this did take so long, it almost took me the entire rest of the fall season. For the winter season, I was expanding my shipping chests to the point where I nearly had absolutely everything to complete it, once the banana was ready of course. On the 7th of winter, I finally had enough experience to buy the foraging mastery, allowing me to plant a mystic tree on Ginger Island. I was glad to see once I arrived I had a fully grown banana tree, which meant the challenge was nearing the end. This allowed me to ship the banana, the sap, large egg, large brown egg, milk, large milk, green bean, cauliflower, potato, garlic and kale, and a bunch more items. That was until I reached the starfruit, which looking in my chests I didn't have, so I must have forgotten to plant it. But with some deluxe speed bro, it won't be a huge setback. Whilst I had the time, I visited Krobus and tried to buy a void egg, until I realised it was 5,000 gold for a single one. But since I could now ship a lot more items, including eggs, which just look at this, I had a load stored up, I made way more than enough gold to buy some tomorrow. This was how the shipping collection looks so far. We're nearly halfway through page 1. I was actually missing the large goat milk, so I headed to Robin's to upgrade the barn once again to start housing some goats. And on the 18th, the starfruit was ready to collect, which allowed me to ship a load more items. This allowed me to complete the entire page 1, and then just under half of page 2. With page 1 complete, we're now straight onto page 2, and I was stuck on truffle oil, but I couldn't really wait around for the travelling cart to give me another one, so I upgraded the barn once again and bought myself a pig. So that meant once spring rolled around, I could finally continue the shipping collection. It was on the 22nd where I got Danger in the Deep, allowing me to collect some radioactive ore and a radioactive bar for the shipping collection. So that leads us to year 3, where I received 3 candles from my grandpa, and I was still waiting for the mystic tree to grow and the pig to produce a truffle. Funnily enough though, it would be the travelling cart that gives me the 3rd truffle I needed of the video, allowing me to turn it straight into truffle oil, which allowed me to ship most of the remaining items. And in the morning, this was how everything looked. Page 2 complete. For the roe and aged roe, I actually managed to get it using the Jewels of the Sea book instead of buying a fish pond, which was a nice time save. As you can see, page 3 wasn't that much, and I had everything else ready, apart from that mystic syrup, which just meant a lot of sleeping on the island farm, until eventually on summer 10, I received it, and could ship the mystic syrup, raisins, dried blackberries, dried mushrooms, carrot, summer squash, broccoli, and finally powder melon, finishing the challenge. In the end, it took me 2.5 in-game years to complete this, and over 25 hours worth of gameplay. This was probably one of the most craziest and fun challenges I've ever completed in this game. recipes unlock at completely different points in the game, ingredients are locked behind different seasons, different friendships, and late game areas, such as Ginger Island, and missing a single Queen of the Sauce show can delay our progress for an entire year. And some recipes don't just require ingredients, they require other recipes that come after them in the list. That's going to be a problem, because if you're completing the cooking collection in order, you are not allowed to skip anything. Looking at the first two recipes we'll have to tackle, things start off relatively easy. The fried egg is the first and is unlocked automatically and only requires a single egg to make. The next one is omelette, which also requires just a single egg and a single bit of milk. The main issue is the recipe for the omelette is locked behind watching Queen of the Sauce on the 28th of spring. So until that point, the plan was simple. I planned to speed through most of the game as fast as possible, while slowly working towards a coop, barn, and also the community centre. Compared to the shipping collection video, I had to focus heavily on friendships this time. That's because half of the recipes are unlocked through 3 and 7 heart mail. For spring specifically, I focused on getting Emily to 3 hearts to unlock the salad, and also Pam to 3 hearts to unlock the cheese cauliflower, 2 recipes coming up fairly quickly. I also knew I couldn't progress much further than that, as the next recipe was the baked fish, which requires watching Queen of the Sauce on summer 7, so I had nothing else to do. And so I blasted through my first spring. I was fishing, mining, farming, anything that really pushed my progress forward. By the 12th of spring, I had already reached floor 100 in the mines, and then later pushed down all the way to floor 120. The goal was to grow as much as possible early on, and also catch every fish I knew I would need later. On the 15th of spring, I made a strange decision that normally would make no sense at all. I bought the first house upgrade. Normally this is completely unnecessary, especially since you can cook using the cookout kit. But because the entire challenge revolved around cooking, it felt wrong to not have at least a kitchen to do it in. And that meant on the 18th of spring, the house upgrade was finally finished. This meant I could finally see every cooking recipe I'd unlocked so far, and would also allow me to start cooking. Around the same time, I had enough gold and resources to start building myself a coop. Conveniently, it was also Pam's birthday today, and giving her a parsnip pushed her to 3 hearts, which meant the next day she would mail me the recipe for the cheese cauliflower. I couldn't make it yet. I still hadn't reached level 6 farming and finally unlocked the cheese press. When I did, I'd be able to cook it. On the 21st of spring, I bought my first chickens, and looking back on things, I should really have started on the Meadowlands farm, but you know me by now, I do stupid things, and I do like making challenges harder for myself. I did, however, make one decision I was very happy with. Pierre's birthday's on the 26th of spring, and he only has 2 loved gifts, fried calamari, which I couldn't make, and the prize catalogue. And as it turns out, the bookseller was in town, and I made sure to buy one for 3,000 gold. On the 24th of spring, my chickens produced their first eggs, which meant I could officially cook the first recipe of the challenge, the fried egg. And fittingly, I also needed one for the chef's bundle inside the community centre. The next recipe was the omelette. For that I would need milk, and I also needed to wait till the 28th of spring to watch Queen of the Sauce. After the flower dance, I built a barn and prepared for cows. Then I waited outside Emily's bedroom like a creep to give her a birthday gift. That was enough to push her to 3 hearts, meaning she would send me the salad recipe in the mail. By the end of the season, I had the next 3 cooking recipes unlocked. All I needed now was milk. Going into summer, my focus was yet again on money. I planted a huge field of melons, not just for the recipes, but also for the gold. A lot of recipes required Ginger Island being unlocked, which meant I was going to need the gold to finish the vault bundle and also wrap up the community centre. On the 5th of summer, my cows had finally produced some milk. That meant I could cook the omelette. The next one was salad, and that was also quite easy, requiring only a leek and dandelion, which I already had from spring. The cheese cauliflower was next. I had a cauliflower from spring, and once I unlocked the cheese press, it was only a matter of time before I could tick that one off. Whilst I was waiting to reach level 6 farming, I decided to try and work on the next few recipes coming up. The baked fish was easy, parsnip soup was fine, vegetable medley. That's where things started to go very wrong. The ingredients itself wasn't really an issue, it was how you get the recipe. Vegetable medley requires 7 hearts with Caroline, and that was the moment I realised this challenge wasn't just going to be slow, it was going to be painful. Still, I suppose it's not the worst thing in the world. I don't know why I'm complaining for. That was until I looked at what the next recipe was. The complete breakfast. The complete breakfast can only be obtained from Queen of the Sauce TV show in year 2. And if that wasn't worse enough, it also requires hash browns and pancakes, which are 2 recipes I cannot make yet, as they come after the complete breakfast. Now the challenge was officially in trouble, and little did I know, this single cooking recipe would be the one thing that would haunt me for this entire challenge. In typical Tom fashion, I pushed that problem to the back of my mind for now, and focused on everything else I could do in the meantime, which consisted of friendships and the community centre. During the early days of summer, I spent some days fishing tuna and super cucumbers, which I then smoked to afford the Vault bundle. At the luau, I made sure to drop a smoked halibut into the soup in order to boost friendship with everyone in town. On the 13th of summer, I had a giant melon harvest, literally, and completed the final Vault bundle. That would unlock the bus and also the Skull Caverns. Around the same time, I hit level 6 farming and finally unlocked the cheese press. Since the desert was now unlocked, I made my first dive into the Skull Caverns. It was pretty tough without a galaxy sword, but I was only here for the iridium ore. All of this iridium will fund any of my future endeavours and also some tool upgrades. On the 16th, despite it being Green Rain Day, my cheese was ready. That meant I could cook cheese cauliflower and then the baked fish. But then after that, everything stalled to a halt. The next recipes were locked behind Caroline's mail and also the complete breakfast. And there's no way around this problem now. We have to go in order. That meant we had to wait until spring of year 2 in order to watch the Queen of the Sauce show and unlock the complete breakfast recipe. Or so I thought. But after checking the wiki, I remembered a single important item in the game that could flip this challenge on its head. The Queen of the Sauce cookbook. Reading it gives you every single recipe you missed from the show, including future ones, although it wasn't going to be that easy. For one, it costs 50,000 gold, and it only spawns in the bookseller's shop after finding 100 golden walnuts. So with nothing else to do, getting 100 golden walnuts became the next objective. That wasn't the only problem though. I still needed to make the complete breakfast and get pancakes and hash browns. I did have a plan to make the complete breakfast, but it scares me. Pancakes do have a small chance to be sent as a gift in the mail by a few different villagers, but I just couldn't rely on that chance of it happening. But it turns out, in the saloon, Gus offers a random cooked dish every day. And what do you know? In this long table of possible dishes is both hash browns and pancakes. So from now on, I would make it part of my daily routine to check the dish of the day to see whether he was selling either of those items. I was also on the lookout for the tortillas as well, as I would need one for the lucky lunch and one for the fish taco, which also annoyingly comes before the tortilla recipe. And by the time summer was coming to a close, my friendships were climbing up, most ingredients were prepared, and luckily today I managed to buy some hash browns. By the middle of winter, I had unlocked several more recipes through friendship, but the complete breakfast still loomed over me like a ghost. But I did manage to wrap up the community centre and finally repair the boat to Ginger Island. I wasn't just here for the 100 golden walnuts. There were actually 5 recipes exclusive to Ginger Island. Mango sticky rice and poi come from Leo at 3 and 7 hearts. Ginger ale is sold by the Volcano Dwarf. Banana pudding comes from the Island Trader. And tropical curry is sold by Gus, but only when he visits the island, which can take a while. My first day on the island was spent collecting a load of golden walnuts, unlocking the island east, and then the dig site in the evening. The next day I went straight into the volcano to get even more golden walnuts, and on floor 5 I went to speak to the dwarf to buy the ginger ale, until I realised I couldn't understand him. That's right, I haven't got the translation guide yet. After taking a long time to solve the memory puzzle, I had enough golden walnuts to repair the island resort. That meant every day it wasn't raining on the island, or a festival day, Gus will have a chance at visiting. By the 22nd of winter, Gus still hadn't visited the island yet, but my recipe list looked full. I was still missing a lot, but most of them were still locked behind the Queen of the Sauce show. Before I forgot, I made sure to repair the Island Trader and unlocked banana pudding for 30 bone pieces. In order to get the dwarf translation guide, I'd need to donate all 4 dwarf scrolls. I was missing 2, so I spent the entire day tilling in the mines. But once I found them both, I could drop them off at the museum, get the translation guide, head back to floor 5 and finally buy the ginger ale recipe. Not long after, I managed to buy some tortillas from Gus, which was perfect, both the lucky lunch and fish taco. As soon as I managed to get my hands on a banana sapling, I planted it straight away, as it would take 28 days to grow and I'd need banana for some recipes. And that's all I did for the first year. And we were only 6 recipes down. It doesn't seem that great, does it? It may seem like a slow year, but I had collected most, if not every item I needed to make all of the recipes, and the only thing that was stopping me was the Queen of the Sauce cookbook, some pancakes for the complete breakfast, and a few more tricky recipes. One of those tricky recipes arrived at my door on spring 1 of year 2, Kent. Well, I don't mean the actual recipe knocked on the door, but the guy who would give me 2 recipes. Yeah, that makes sense. Right, guys? Anyway, of course I would have to wait until year 2 anyway, since Kent arrives in the valley here, and of course he has 2 recipes which he sends the player at 3 and 7 hearts, which meant even more friendships, yay! On the 4th of spring, I completed the Gourmand Frog quest, which gave me 15 more golden walnuts, and was enough to reach 100 and unlock Mr. Key's walnut room. But after reaching 100, that meant the next time the bookseller was in town, he would sell the Queen of the Sauce cookbook, and on the 11th, it was there for 50,000 gold. After reading it, it gave me 14 new recipes, which was just incredible, and this was how the cooking collection looked. Of course you can see I've made 6, and pretty much all of the rest of the recipes were ready to be made. If it wasn't for that stupid complete breakfast. We still had to make the vegetable medley before that, so I bought some beets from Sandy and planted them inside the greenhouse. I took some time to go through every single recipe in the game and sort out everything I needed. If I didn't have something, I'd plant it straight away. That meant when I could finally get my hands on pancakes, I could make the complete breakfast and power through a large chunk of them. And the game was clearly aware of my struggles and decided to mock me by giving me the complete breakfast inside a mystery box. Annoyingly, during the desert festival, Gus wasn't going to be at the saloon, so I spent the time collecting a few more items I needed. On the 19th, however, I strolled into the saloon and he wasn't there. Instead, he was on Ginger Island. This would finally allow me to buy the tropical curry recipe from him, which was just super great to get over and done with. And after checking the saloon for many days, on the 27th of spring, he sold a single dish of pancakes, which meant I could finally make the complete breakfast and begin crossing off a bunch of recipes. That started with the vegetable medley, complete breakfast, fried calamari, strange bun, lucky lunch, fried mushroom, all the way up until pumpkin soup. I couldn't make any more progress since the super meal was next, and the recipe was sent to you from Kent once you made it to 7 hearts with him, which left the only ones I hadn't gotten yet being the super meal, poi and mango sticky rice from Leo. And one thing I love about Stardew Valley is its humour. Of course, we've already had it give me a complete breakfast in a mystery box, and today's way of the game saying I hate you was sending me some pancakes in the mail, which I had spent months waiting for. It's almost over. I did manage to get the poi from Leo the very next morning, and around the middle of summer, I had made it to 7 hearts with Kent, and he sent me the recipe for the super meal, which meant another giant cooking session inside the kitchen. That allowed me to complete a load more recipes up until ginger ale, leaving only 6 more to go. On the 26th, I had managed to reach 7 hearts with Leo, and invited him to stay on the main island. And whilst I was on the island, I made sure to grab some bananas and mangoes before leaving to make the banana pudding. It was nice to see Leo's hut being built the next morning, but what I was really interested in was the mango sticky rice recipe in the mail, which allowed me to make the final 5 recipes. And just like that, I had completed the Stardew Valley cooking collection in order. Artifacts don't count towards the collection until it's donated to the museum. And in order to stop me from just farming geodes the entire time and opening them all at the end, I've decided that if I collect either a mineral or artifact I haven't unlocked yet in the collections, I must trash them regardless of what it is until it comes next in the collection. Which, as you will see, was a terrible idea. But without further ado, let's begin. After some basic research, it's possible to collect every single artifact and mineral without unlocking Ginger Island, so that means for once we don't have to rush the community centre or even complete it at all. So for now, we can play through the game fairly normally, which consists of farming and most early days spent fishing. I managed to come across my first artifact on day 4, the cog, but since it's not the first artifact in order, we will have to trash it. And on the 5th of spring, the mines had opened up, and by the looks of the first few minerals in the list, they can all be found here without geodes. So the first goal of the video will be completing the first row of minerals. Annoyingly, whilst I'm on the lower levels, I'm going to have to ignore both the quartz and earth crystals I find, since the first mineral is an emerald. The emerald can be found in emerald nodes, past floor 80. Or they have a small chance to be dropped in gem nodes. So already off to a great start, and oh boy was it about to get much worse. On day 6, Mayor Lewis showed me around the abandoned community centre. But as I mentioned before, I won't really focus on this at all, since it would just slow us down, when we really need to be focusing on completing those mines. Once again, I appreciate this game's humour, as it clearly must have watched my previous video on completing the cooking collector in order, and by the time day 9 rolled around, we had to ignore diamonds on 2 separate attempts, since, well, we are nowhere near unlocking it in the minerals tab. And to top off my bad fortune, I had to trash a rare disc the next day. Which was the point where I began to regret introducing this new rule. And I'm sure trashing the rare disc here will definitely not cause us problems later, right? But finally, we do manage to come across the first mineral in the collection, the emerald. And we can finally begin this insane challenge. Of course, the game had to remind me of my place in all of this by handing me one more diamond to put straight into the trash. And not just one, a second one on floor 94 too. That didn't really matter, as on day 12 we could finally start making progress in the minerals collection by dropping off the emerald to the museum. The next mineral we need to find is the aquamarine, but since we had made it past floor 80 in the mines, that meant every mine related mineral can now be found, and so I wasted no time in beginning the search. Compared to the long search for the emerald, this one proved much quicker, and on the 14th I could donate the aquamarine to the museum. I was on a roll and I jumped straight back in for the next search, which was the ruby. And after trashing yet another diamond, I found it around 12:20 AM and donated it the next morning. Before the day had even gotten started, I headed back into the mines and found the amethyst. And after yet another diamond, I found the topaz and donated it on the 16th. And honestly, this continued pretty smoothly. The next mineral is the jade, which did take much longer than usual to find, but proved not a lot of trouble, and I managed to donate it. This finally meant, after so many heartbreaks with the diamonds, I was glad to realise that the next one was indeed the diamond, and I could finally stop trashing them. It did take quite a while for me to find one, ironically, but I managed to find one around 340 and donate it. Although, it was at this point where the scale of the challenge was finally upon us. The next mineral I had to collect and donate was a prismatic shard. Oh no. I thought for now, it'd be best to take a break from mining and donating to focus on some other skills like fishing. I would need to try and get max in every single skill at some point in the challenge, for a reason I'll get onto later. And let's be fair, there isn't much point farming for a prismatic shard, since the odds are absolutely terrible. I was heartbroken when on the 22nd, I managed to fish up a dinosaur egg, and as you know, it isn't the first artifact in the collection, which means it had to go straight into the trash bin. Why did I even add this rule? The main reason I still wanted to fish was to afford the bus repair and unlock the skull caverns, and once I made it to level 10 fishing, I could sell a load of catfish I had stored up from a few rainy days for a combined 50% more, and by the 23rd I could purchase most of the vault bundle, and the next day buy the last one. If it wasn't obvious already, I wanted to unlock the skull caverns as soon as possible to get that annoying prismatic shard. One way I could potentially get a prismatic shard this early is through a mystic stone, which are a rare spawn, but do have a 25% chance at dropping one. And whilst I was in the skull caverns, on the 26th, I managed to find myself one. And no prismatic shard. Damn, I thought that would be it. And so I spent the next few days inside the skull caverns hoping to find myself one. And by the 27th of spring, the day finally came. It's going to be super annoying to donate our first one to the museum, but it will finally allow us to continue the mineral collection. But as it seems, it didn't really matter, as lightning did strike twice, and before the end of the day, I came across yet another one. And what a way to end the final day of the season by donating the prismatic shard to the museum, and whilst I remembered, I took the other one to the desert to get the galaxy sword. Luckily, the next mineral was the quartz, and that was nice and easy to find and donate, alongside the fire quartz too, although I would have to wait until tomorrow to donate it. Here we are in summer, which began with a trip to the museum to donate the fire quartz, which left only the frozen tear and earth crystal for the mining related minerals. I did briefly head back into the mines on the 2nd of summer to grab myself a second fire quartz to donate to the community centre to fix the minecarts. Of course remembering to find a frozen tear, and then the earth crystal by 2 PM. And this is our progress so far. This whole section of the mineral collection has gone pretty easy and gone by quite fast. Unfortunately, the remaining minerals can only be found inside geodes, which is another problem. Since my new rule, which doesn't allow me to pick up any minerals or artifacts that I haven't either unlocked yet, or come next in the collection, just taking a stash of geodes to Clint to open will make it extremely inefficient, as we cannot guarantee what we need and will just end up trashing 90% of the things he gives us. This is probably where the most random and often underused item in the entire game comes into play, the Geode Crusher. This single machine will allow me to open geodes myself with a single piece of coal, and once completed will show exactly what was inside it, and more importantly, without picking it up. Which is my main plan to get at least most of the minerals done and some artifacts. You're also probably wondering why I've been neglecting the artifact collection up until this point, but that's because most of them are just incredibly tough to get in order. Luckily, the first 4 artifacts are the 4 different dwarf scrolls, which can be farmed quite easily, so those are the next items we'll be going for next. Since I could now pick up the frozen tear and earth crystals, I was able to wrap up the boiler room bundle and unlock the minecarts inside the community centre, which will make traversing the valley much easier. By the time the 8th of summer had rolled around, I began tilling the mines to find all of them. Of course, I managed to till up Dwarf Scroll 2 before Dwarf Scroll 1, which meant it was time for the trash once again, but thankfully it didn't take me much longer to find the Dwarf Scroll 1 by 2 PM, and this finally begun the first artifact to the collection. I then returned straight away to find the second one, and managed to till up an ancient doll, which has a 0.03% chance of happening. But of course, I haven't unlocked it yet in the artifacts, which means I'm going to have to trash it. Dwarf Scroll 2 was finally mine late into the day, and I could donate it to the museum the first thing the next morning. The third one didn't take me much longer to find, leaving only the 4th and final one to get. I'm not sure whether this is lucky or unlucky, as once again I tilled up another ancient doll, at a 0.03% chance. That had to be trashed again. But in the evening, the final scroll was mine. For this season's crops, I'd chosen to plant hops, since they grant the most farming experience this season, and I do want to try and max out the skill as fast as possible. I did mention earlier about needing to max all my skills, and the main reason is to unlock the foraging mastery and get treasure totems, which as you know create a huge area around you of artifact spots, and will be the main way I hope to find all of the artifacts, although we'll get more into that once we reach max skills. That means for now, most of my daily energy is being spent on chopping trees and then the stumps in the secret woods for foraging experience, which is by far the worst one to max out. Once I'd done that, I could swing round to the museum and donate the final scroll and collect the dwarf translation guide. And similar to how I had to stop in the minerals, this is how far we can progress with the artifacts, which is pretty pathetic to be honest. As similar to the geodes, it's very unlikely we'll get exactly what we need from artifact spots, with the next one being the chipped amphora. This exact point is proved when I got the rusty spur back on the farm, and since it doesn't come next in the collection, I'm forced to trash it. So the question is, what can we do now? And honestly, it's a good question, since we're just waiting for special orders to get the Geode Crusher, and also the treasure totem to get all of the artifacts. So from now up until that point, I'll be working on reaching max skills, which consists of chopping trees, then stumps, and then also working on some combat on the higher levels of the mines. And on the night of the 15th of summer, we were all the way up to level 9 combat, and then level 6 farming the very next day, with us finally reaching level 10 combat on the 18th. And before the end of the summer, I had made it to level 8 farming, with the only 2 skills that aren't maxed out yet being, well, farming and foraging. With the arrival of fall, we will need to grow a lot more crops to push us past the 2 final farming levels. I chose to plant some pumpkins since they're the best for fall experience, but more importantly, fall is the introduction of special orders, and the one we were looking for was Cave Patrol from Clint, which doesn't have any special requirements to spawn in. We only had to get a little bit lucky. The first week wasn't what we wanted, but that's fine, we still have plenty of things to do. And thankfully, I managed to wrap up level 10 foraging, leaving only farming. But since there was nothing more I could do, literally nothing, I chose to sleep through the days, and checking the special orders board every new week. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm sure you could see loads of crystallariums in my house. That's because I've been duplicating loads of diamonds, since the crafting recipe for the Geode Crusher requires 1, and I was planning on making a bunch. The new week, no cave patrol, that's fine. And on the 14th, I collected a large batch of pumpkins, which did push me to level 9 farming, And one more big yield of pumpkins should be way more than enough to max this skill out. For the third week of fall, I checked the special orders and no cave patrol. That left the only event of the season being the final pumpkin harvest, which was way more than enough to send me to level 10 farming and maxing out all of my skills. I didn't really need to do this, but I did grow a sweet gem berry to take it to the statue in the secret woods to get myself another star drop. Since I had managed to reach max skills, I chose to head straight to the skull caverns and bomb loads of floors in order to quickly reach my first mastery and get that treasure totem. It did turn out to be a great skull caverns run, but I didn't manage to level up in mastery just yet. I did check the first special orders of the season, but yet again there was no cave patrol. One more day in the skull caverns was more than enough to level up my mastery, and I headed straight to the cave to unlock the foraging mastery. Now I could finally make treasure totems, and it was a case of making as many as we could. To make one, they require both hardwood and moss, which I have plenty of, with the only other material being mystic syrup from mystic trees. I did have enough to make 3 mystic trees, and combined with some tree fertilizer, shouldn't take us too long before we can start working back on the artifact collection. Sleeping through another week, the new week special order is yet again no cave patrol. Okay, this is starting to get on my nerves. But by the next week, 2 out of the 3 trees had fully grown, so I crafted up some tappers and waited for some mystic syrup to come to me. No one surprised, no cave patrol yet again. And for the final week, we have no cave patrol. So there we go, we're straight into year 2. I decided to shove Kent out of the way and collect another batch of mystic syrup and check the special orders board. No cave patrol. I'm going to go insane. Does this even exist? Nothing on the 8th, nothing on the 15th, and nothing on the 22nd. But finally, on the 1st of summer, we could finally start the cave patrol special order. I suppose one positive of all this waiting is it gave me plenty of time to collect lots of mystic syrup, and considering how many artifacts we still need to get, we're going to need lots. The special order itself isn't that difficult, only requiring 50 skeletons to be slayed, which I managed to do in a single day. That meant the next morning, Clint had sent me the crafting recipe for the geode crusher, and we could finally resume the mineral collection. Right now, I made 11 of them, and began opening all the hundreds of geodes I had saved up until this point. And this is what happens when they finish. They display exactly what it contained without me picking them up. That means I could leave the mineral inside the geode crusher until I need it. The main issue was, I was going to need a load of geode crushers, and I mean a ton. I chose to spend all of my gold on gold ore, which was a giant waste of money, but it allowed me to make a bunch more and finally get the next mineral in the collection, alamite. And this is basically the plan for the mineral collection, just to rinse and repeat this process until I had collected and donated every single mineral. But it didn't take me too long until every geode crusher I had was filled up with a different mineral. That meant I had to farm even more gold on the lava levels until I could make even more. But before long, we had the next one, Bixite, and a few days later we had loads more crushers and Byrite to donate. Thankfully, this is the point where things start to pick up. I was able to donate a bunch more. And by the 5th, this was all the progress we had made. On the 6th, I dropped off the slate, leaving only 2 more minerals left, although one of them was a fairy stone, which I still hadn't gotten yet. And annoyingly, I had ran out of geodes. For now, I chose to leave it and begin working on the artifacts. In total, I had 20 treasure totems and headed out to find the chipped amphora. There was nothing in the first treasure totem, but I did manage to find it in the second one. Not long after, I found the arrowhead in the mountains, and then also an ancient doll, which thankfully I wasn't close enough to pick up. Thankfully I did take off my magnet ring, just in case this would happen, and was also the reason I decided to upgrade my hoe all the way to iridium, in order to dig the ground far away from me, to stop me picking up anything I didn't want until later. That meant after donating the arrowhead, I could head back up the mountain and pick up the ancient doll, and donate it right away. The next one was the elvish jewellery, which can be found when fishing, which ended up being a horrible idea, as I spent ages fishing for just one. But on the 12th, I finally got one and dropped it off at the museum. The next artifact in line was the chewing stick, and while searching, I did manage to find a bunch more artifacts, which I would try my best to avoid picking up until I needed them. The best thing is, the items will remain on the ground until I close or reopen the game, so as long as I didn't sleep and stop playing the game, the artifacts would stay there. Whilst in the Cindersap forest, I managed to find 2 elvish jewellery. It's not funny at all, is it? But this did lead to a great strategy I found to avoid picking up items and then trashing them. If I simply had a full inventory at all times, I would never accidentally pick something up I didn't want. Whilst I'm at it, I'll also be picking and reading up any secret notes I find, as I will need 2 specific ones for artifacts. The next day, I came across the chewing stick and donated it right away. The fan was next, and was quite an easy one on the beach. Although, guess what was next? The dinosaur egg. Remember that one we trashed ages ago? Yep, could have used that one now. The best way to get one was from Pepper Rex's, with a 10% chance. And so, after finding a prehistoric floor, I got myself one. Although we aren't completely done with prehistoric floors just yet, as we will need to return once more later on. I'm not really mentioning it, but I'm still working on finding the fairy stone by opening any frozen or omni geodes I might have laying around. After donating the dinosaur egg, the next artifact was the rare disc, and yet again was found earlier and had to trash it. And this did mark the most boring part of the entire challenge. The rare disc has a 0.3% chance of dropping from enemies on the lava levels, but can also be found in fishing chests. After the struggles with the elvish jewellery, I chose to stay far away from fishing and head down to the mines to try and get myself one. So I spent the next 2 whole days farming on the lava levels with 0 luck, eventually caving in and trying to fish it up. And by the looks of things, I managed to come across every other artifact apart from the rare disc. That was until late on the 17th, I managed to hook it inside a treasure chest, finally. And at this point, I had most of the other artifacts laying around the valley, and a simple treasure totem did make it quite easy to tick off a bunch more. And this was how the progress looked. We did have to stop, as the next 2 artifacts were 2 different ancient dolls. The green one is next, which I did find 2 earlier in the challenge, but were trashed. There is actually one way to guarantee you find it. On secret note number 17, it is a treasure map, which at the X gives you the doll. But of course I didn't have that one. So I headed back into the mines to try and till for it. Funnily enough, despite it being a 0.03% chance at finding it, I did get it pretty effortlessly, and donated it before the end of the day. The next ancient doll was much easier to find, since I already had secret note number 18, and could drop that one off the next day. And since we're back to normal artifacts now, I proceeded to donate a bunch more over the course of the next few days. We had made great progress until we reached the vertebrae, which has a small chance to spawn on the bus stop. The main issue is, since there aren't that many tiles artifacts could spawn on the bus stop, it made using my treasure totems pretty useless. But thankfully, they do have a 30% drop chance from a Pepper Rex, so I was straight back to the Skull Caverns for one. I managed to find a prehistoric floor pretty quickly and collect a vertebrae. I'd like to say the rest of this was troublesome, but in all honesty, it was all clean sailing. I had already done most of the hard work for the geode crushers and the treasure totems, and it was just a case of donating them in the correct order. The remaining artifacts I still had to use a few treasure totems to find, but I had uncovered most of them already. And just like that, we had completed the artifact collection in order, leaving only 2 final minerals until we had done that one too. But after another batch of geodes, we did finally get the fairy stone, which I could donate, and then the final one, the star shards, to complete the mineral collection in order. And wow, this was much tougher than I had expected. Out of every collection we have done in order, one stood out as the most difficult, the fishing collection. Unlike every other time, where we could see what items we had to collect in order, the fishing collection works very differently. When fishing, we are completely unable to see what we're catching, and there's no guarantee we get exactly what we need. But even if we solved that problem with the use of sonar bobbers that would allow us to see what fish we had hooked, there are still items such as algae, jellies, and seaweed which hook in instantly without giving me any chance to cancel. And of course, they all count towards the collection. Before we begin, taking a quick look at the fishing collection shows us some obvious problems we're going to have to find creative ways to work around. To start, in order to contribute to the fishing collection, the fish has to be caught either with a rod or a crab pot. so buying from the travelling cart does not work. The one thing that can make this challenge bearable is the sonar bobber. This will allow us to see exactly what we're catching, and can allow us to cancel out of any fish I just didn't need to get yet. Although annoyingly, the crafting recipe is unlocked at level 6 fishing, and then can be bought as many times as I want from Willie's shop. So it was clear I was going to need some way of reaching level 6 fishing without fishing. And thankfully a lot of you suggested using fish ponds. Fish ponds provide good fishing experience when harvesting and completing the quests, so that's our way to level 6 fishing solved. The main issue with fish ponds is the cost to make one. The stone and gold isn't really the problem, it was the seaweed and algae. As just mentioned, they come so far into the fishing collection, we would have to try and obtain them using other methods that don't contribute to the fishing collection. Luckily with the green algae, it can be commonly found in trash cans and is also dropped by green slimes at a 10% chance. Although it was the seaweed that's the problem. It has a 3% chance of spawning every night in the tide pool area, and can also spawn on the beach farm, which is the farm we'll be using for this challenge. Right, that's enough rambling, let's just get on with it. Of course the beach farm isn't going to be the greatest, but since our focus is getting fish ponds and not crops, it won't really hurt us that much. In terms of my early goals, I'll be checking the trash cans every day for green algae, and then searching the beach farm for seaweed. And just like that, we managed to find our first green algae right away, and as you can see, we technically didn't catch it, so it doesn't contribute to the collection. Another perk of the beach farm is you can find crates that change depending on how many farmhouse upgrades you have. My first one gave me some coffee, and another one some cherry bombs. Of course, since it's day 2, I could head down to the beach and collect the bamboo pole from Willie. Although unfortunately, the first fish in the collection is the pufferfish. The pufferfish is limited to the summer season, so at bare minimum, we cannot start the collection until then. It was also going to be a top priority to take 300 pieces of wood to repair the bridge to the tide pools. Of course, we needed access to this area since it has a small chance to spawn seaweed. That will be needing to make our first fish pond, then to level 6 fishing, and then sonar bobbers. Some of you mentioned bait and bobber books, which is something I'll keep an eye out for, since every book grants the player 250 fishing experience, and is quite commonly sold at the travelling cart and the bookseller. By the time the first travelling cart had rolled around, it sold me a sunfish for 500 gold. I did choose to buy it here, to place inside my fish ponds later, although I never end up using it, which you'll see why later. Also, just to reiterate whilst we're here, buying from the travelling cart doesn't contribute to the collection. Day 5 also means the mines were available for the first time, and I wasted no time heading down there. I did manage to slay a rock crab, and it did drop the crab item, but it doesn't add to the collection. On these lower floors, I'm trying to slay as many green slimes as I could, since they have a 10% chance of green algae, and will probably be the best way to get loads of it. And we do manage to get one more here. Whilst we're mining, I'll also address some future goals I'm aiming for. I'll be trying to reach Ginger Island as fast as possible, as the stingray, lionfish and blue discus are all exclusive to it, and cannot be caught anywhere else. Unfortunately, the best way to do this is via the Jojo route, but it will be troublesome, since I can no longer go for catfish. This means we'll have to rely heavily on crops to make money early on, like potatoes and strawberries. By the end of the day, we have made it down to floor 20 and came away with one more green algae, and I was straight back into the mines the very next day, which I found my first one on a slime infested floor. Looking back on it, it's a shame I didn't think of resetting this slime infestation for the entire day for even more green algae. But you know, hindsight's a brilliant thing of course. On the 7th, I had bought a bunch more seeds from Pierre's and found my 4th algae inside a trash can. From the travelling car, I bought myself a walleye, but again, I never ended up using it. By the 8th, I was beginning to worry about the lack of seaweed I haven't found yet, although this luck was about to change. Whilst doing my daily search of the farm, I came across my first piece of seaweed, which reiterates why choosing the beach farm was essential in this challenge. Talking of my luck turning around, the very next day I found my second piece of seaweed on the rock pools, getting us one step closer to building our very first fish pond. Alongside my progress in the mines, I'm also working on reaching foraging level 5 and choosing the gatherer profession. It would give me a 20% chance of a double harvest. That does include beach forage like seaweed we find on the farm and in the rock pools. On the 11th, I sold a batch of kale to Pierre in order to afford a pickaxe upgrade. That will help our progress in the mines. And whilst I had the forage on hand, I chose to complete the spring foraging bundle inside the community centre. I did just say I was going to the Jojo route, but I do plan on completing both the boiler room and the vault bundle normally first, because they're both cheaper and easier to do. And what do you know it? I've managed to find another piece of seaweed, bringing our total up to 3 out of 5. Right now, I'm missing only 2 pieces and 1 more green algae. That night I made it to level 5 foraging and did choose the gatherer profession. After such a great start, our progress did slow down a tad over the next few days, but in that time I did head to the egg festival, which I won of course, and planted a bunch of strawberries. It wasn't as pressing as some of the other issues I have to address, but we will have to donate enough items to gain access to the sewers at some point to get the slimejack, mutant carp, alongside the dark talisman for the void salmon, and by the 15th we had already made it to the lava levels on floor 80. An early idea I had to gain fishing experience was crab pots, so I wrapped up the crab pot bundle to get some, only to realise I needed bait for them, and even if I did find bait, I couldn't even collect from them unless it was trash, since all the crab pot fish collected in this way contributed to the fishing collection. So yeah, that was a stupid idea. It wasn't until the 17th where I found yet another piece of seaweed, but with the help of the gatherer profession, that meant 2 pieces of seaweed, and I was now up to 5. I chose to rush straight to the mines to fight some green slimes to get the final algae I needed. It didn't take too long, and I rushed straight to Robin's to build one, only to realise they cost 5,000 gold apiece. What? Since when were they this expensive? After that unfortunate incident, I chose to spend the rest of the day inside the mines, making it down to floor 100 and collecting my first star drop. Making it this far allowed me to collect everything I needed to complete the boiler room bundle and finally repair the minecars. The 19th meant I could finally afford my first fish pond, which was a great achievement to be honest. This did mean however we could finally start increasing our fishing XP. It's slow through fish ponds, but it was better than nothing. Whilst Robin was building the fish pond, I chose to wrap up all of the mining work I had and made it to floor 120 the next day and collected the skull key. This was important to mention, as I do plan on heading to the skull caverns very soon. On the 21st, it was ready. The only decision was, what do I put in there? I did decide to head to the wiki to look at what each fish gives, and it turns out the most basic crab pot fish have the chance to produce between 1 to 3 pieces of seaweed that I could then use to build even more fish ponds. So instead of my sunfish or walleye, I threw a cockle in there, adding 2 more straight after. This would not only grant us fishing experience, but useful materials to expand our fishing empire. The first quest was to give them 5 pieces of clay, and each time I complete one of these quests, I get some more fishing experience. And what do you know it? On the 25th, the fish pond had produced 2 pieces of seaweed, and most importantly, doesn't count towards the collection. On the final day of the season, I'm visited by Willy, who voiced his concern on the lack of fishing I've been doing recently. He chose to spend some time training me, and also handing me the training rod. As funny as this might be, this cutscene grants us level 1 fishing instantly, which is huge in our goal for level 6 fishing for sonar bobbers. The last task of the season is to make a bunch of sprinklers to grow a bunch of melons in the summer. And just like that, we're here in summer. After completing yet another fish pond quest, I spent most of the day planting and watering as many melons as I could afford. And I mean lots and lots of melons. But of course, since it's the summer now, I could officially start trying to catch the pufferfish. Although, it was going to be much tougher than you think. Since I was nowhere near fishing level 6 to buy sonar bobbers, I was basically going to have to guess by the pattern whether it was the pufferfish or not. Since both the pufferfish and octopus have very similar patterns, I chose to wait until after 1 PM to try and get it. The actual catch itself is super easy, since the first ever fish you get is completely free and cannot escape. The main problem is trying to fish without getting any seaweed or sea jellies. After a while, I thought I found it. The pattern felt right, I pulled it in, and it was a sunfish. Which means I'm going to have to reset the entire day. Resetting the day is the only way to undo progress in the collection. If I let that sunfish register before it's unlocked in that order, the whole run is officially dead. And here's the most brutal part. This challenge is mathematically impossible without resets, because before you even have certain fish unlocked in the collection, the game can still give you seaweed, algae or jellies, and since those appear earlier in the collection, catching anything out of order instantly ruins the attempt. There's no obvious odds on the wiki for getting jellies, seaweed or algae, but it's definitely high, maybe around 10%, so unless I reset the day, the run just ends. And trust me, I'm going to be resetting a lot. I'm not cutting out a single fail, so you'll see exactly why day resetting is required and not optional. The reason it's mainly impossible is just how much fishing you need to do. You'll be casting your rod over 300 times in this challenge, and the chances you never get a piece of green algae, seaweed or jellies is just so tiny it's pretty much impossible. But anyway, after returning to the beach once again, we managed to get what seemed like the pufferfish, and it was. You might be asking, now I've caught the pufferfish, can't I just catch them over and over again for more fishing experience? it does have its limitations. For one thing, we would need to get our hands on a bait maker, which doesn't unlock until level 6 fishing, and by that point we also unlock sonar bobbers, so it would be pointless. And secondly, even if we could get loads of targeted pufferfish bait, the more times we keep fishing, the better chances we have of getting both seaweed and sea jellies, which come later in the collection and would lead to another day reset. And judging by how common these items were to get, it would be much more efficient for us just to keep working on our fish ponds than wasting time catching pufferfish and resetting the day every time we get one of those items. And just a reminder, these aren't rare items, these are common items. It is almost impossible for you to spend a day fishing and not get at least one of these. I did choose to sleep straight after that to save our progress and make sure I don't do anything to accidentally ruin today's progress. And sleeping to save our progress is yet another great suggestion made in the comments. Sleeping obviously saves the day and meant I didn't have to get every fish one after the other, and instead could save my progress slowly, one fish at a time. We wouldn't be able to make any more progress in the fishing collection since the next one is the anchovy. That's caught during the spring or fall. That meant this season's objective was to search for even more seaweed and algae to make more fish ponds to get me to fishing level 6. And whilst I'm at it, tried to complete the vault bundle too. On the 13th of summer, our melons were ready, and I even managed to get myself a giant one. Selling them all at Pierre's put me on 54,000 gold, which was more than enough to finish the vault bundle. With the remaining gold, I did buy a bunch more melon seeds to plant under the sprinklers. I chose to spend the next day inside the mines, farming a bunch of iron and coal ore to make bombs for tomorrow's trip. The goal of the Skull Caverns, as always, was to gather as much iridium ore as possible, which I can turn into iridium bars to fund the rest of the community centre, and anything else along the way. Luckily, I did come out with a prismatic shard that I was able to trade in for the galaxy sword, alongside a bunch of triple shot espressos and spicy eels. It had felt like forever since I found my last seaweed, and that all changed today as my fish pond had produced 2 more pieces, and also another one on the beach. That meant I was back up to 5 pieces, and I headed straight to the caves to slay some green slimes for the green algae. And just like that, I built my second fish pond. I caved in and bought the Joja Mart membership, which is always painful to do, but will allow us to finish the community centre much quicker and get to Ginger Island much faster too. The next day I bought the bridge repair, followed by yet another Big Skull Caverns run. On the 20th my second fish pond was finished, and I chose to place yet another crab pot fish into it for even more seaweed chances. Later I paid for the greenhouse repair, and it wasn't too long later until I received 2 more pieces of seaweed from our fish ponds. Selling a few more iridium bars at Clint's, I was able to afford the panning upgrade and wrapped up the community centre. A few days later, yet more seaweed came from the fish pond, and as soon as Willie's shop opened, I headed straight down there to donate all the materials to repair the boat to Ginger Island. I did come across another slime infestation in the mines, and I decided to take full advantage of it this time and farm a bunch of green algae for another fish ponds. Before heading to Ginger Island, I chose to buy myself the backpack upgrade and also sell a bit more iridium to buy a bait and bobber book from the bookseller. That alone was enough to push me up to fishing level 2. It was still a way off level 6, but we were about to skyrocket that level up very soon. For now though, it was time to head to Ginger Island. As mentioned before, my main goal here is to find 100 golden walnuts to unlock Mr. Key's walnut room, and also get enough golden walnuts to unlock the island east to catch the stingray later. Around 5 PM, I had enough golden walnuts to unlock the island west, and later the dig site too. The next day, I was straight into the volcano to find a bunch more golden walnuts, and before the arrival of fall, I harvested a batch of melons and planted a bunch of crops on the island farm. Some for quests and others for walnuts. In the evening, I tackled the annoying memory puzzle, which I totally didn't use my phone to record the pattern. You believe me, right guys? With the island east finally unlocked, I could access the Pirate's Cove for 1 more golden walnut, and also means once I get around to the stingray, I'll be able to catch it right here. On the 1st of fall, Gunfer is at my door to hand me the rusty key to the sewers, which was a perfect timing, as I would need to access there later for a few fish. On the 2nd, I found yet another piece of seaweed on the beach, which put my total up to 5. Before I built another fish pond, I headed to the sewers to speak with Krobus, in order to access the mutant bug lair and get the dark talisman. I would need to come back to the mutant bug lair later for the slime jack. And what do you know it? The very next morning, my pond had given me 2 more seaweed. And boom, our 3rd fish pond. Once again, I'll be placing a crab pot fish in there to get even more seaweed. To make the farm look nice, I did decide to add some paths, because why not? Over at the bookseller, I bought myself yet another expensive bait and bobber book, which was enough to push me to level 3 fishing. On the 8th, I found more seaweed, which meant I could build 1 more fish pond. And by the 13th, I finally had 100 golden walnuts to access Mr. Key's walnut room. And now is probably the perfect time to explain why I even need to get in here. The main issues with fish is that they all have their own seasons, which they're able to be caught in, different weather they have to be caught in, and different areas. Although there is one item in the game which can allow us to catch any fish we want, at any time we want: magic bait. Since the fish in the collection have no correlation in which order they come in, magic bait will be essential in us being able to get every fish we need in the correct order, instead of waiting entire seasons just to get what we want. Unfortunately, that means we're going to have to tackle some tough key quests, and this week's choices were terrible. I did choose Junimo Kart, I gave it a go, and decided that this isn't for me. Skipping to the new week, we yet again had a terrible selection of key quests for this stage of the game. But by the end of fall, we had finally reached level 4 fishing thanks to our fish ponds, and found even more seaweed on the beach too. The first key quest I decided to attempt was the Skull Cavern Invasion, which was tough, but definitely possible. On my first attempt, it went pretty terribly, and I chose to call it quits on floors 29. Charging in the very next day, I managed to complete it and collect the key gems. Fish pond number 5 was built too. You're probably this far into the video and wondering, when are we going to start fishing again? Which is a true and very understandable concern. This is a fishing video after all. But we were about to get the best thing ever to happen to us. At the travelling cart on the final day of fall, it sold a bait and bobber book. But it wasn't just one, it was as many as I could afford to buy. That meant I could, right now, get to level 6 fishing as long as I had the gold to do so. Although it wasn't going to be that easy. They cost 6,000 gold each, and I could only afford 4 right now. Those alone was just enough to boost me to level 5 fishing. I wasn't going to let this opportunity slip, so I sold everything, and I mean literally everything I could. But even after 1 more it wasn't enough. 2 more it wasn't enough. So yet again I sold even more stuff. And luckily, only 1 more was enough to take me to level 6 fishing. Finally, we can now start the fun stuff, and begin completing this fishing collection. Little did I know, this was not going to be fun. The problems were only just beginning, and sure, the grind to level 6 was over, but it was nothing compared to what's to come. Overnight, of course, we had made it to level 6 fishing and unlocked the sonar bobber. That will allow us to see exactly what fish we've hooked, and combined with magic bait means we can start fishing right away, starting with the anchovy. Let's start fishing. Seaweed. Oh, this is going to be painful, isn't it? And that right there is exactly what I meant by impossible. You are pretty much guaranteed seaweed or sea jelly at least once every 10 or so attempts. The main drawback of magic bait is it allows you to catch any fish that might be in a certain location from any season, making getting exactly what we want much harder. And not long after the first reset, we managed to get ourselves yet another seaweed. That doesn't matter, 3rd time's the charm, and this time I chose to fish on the farm, which went even worse. Okay, that's fine, 4th time's the... Okay, surely not 5 times, right? And it actually was. We came away with the anchovy without encountering any seaweed. And this is where the sleep and save strategy comes in. Whenever I finally caught the fish I needed in the correct order, I would immediately end the day and sleep to lock in that progress. Sleeping obviously saves the game and also the collection permanently. From that point on, if the next day I accidentally caught seaweed, algae or anything out of order, I could then reset the day without losing the fish I'd already secured. Basically, every time I sleep, it becomes a checkpoint. Catch the right fish, sleep, and lock it in. The next fish was tuna, and could also be caught in the ocean. And we're right back to Seaweed Street once again. I then chose to try and catch it on Ginger Island, since the amount of different fish that could be caught there are much lower, and we managed to get it first try. You're probably wondering, why have I just started fishing again? What happened to the sleep and save strategy? Well, that was the plan, until I realised the date. It's currently winter free, and we will need to have everything completed by the 15th, which is the start of the night market, and I would need to take the submarine down to catch the midnight squid, spookfish and blobfish. So I couldn't really afford to just catch 1 fish and sleep. We had to risk it and go for more than 1 per day. Luckily, the next one in line was the sardine, which I got first try, although I wouldn't always get this lucky, so I chose to head to bed and save our progress. Bream was next, and it was a river fish that didn't cause us too much trouble. Same with the largemouth bass. Yet again, I didn't want to risk going any further, so I slept once again. You may have noticed I've accumulated lots more seaweed from my fish ponds, but since I'm already fishing level 6, I don't have any use for them anymore. The next fish was the smallmouth bass, that caused no problems to get. Then the rainbow trout, then the salmon. It was definitely risky going for 3 in one day, but I still had all of these fish to go before the 15th, so I had to take risk. And things continued fairly clean sailing. The walleye, then the perch, but then I got greedy. The next fish I needed was the carp, and I'd already caught the walleye and the perch in the same day and haven't slept yet. And I thought, the sewers is a good place to get the carp, since it's only the mutant carp and the carp down there. But that wasn't true. White algae. Which of course isn't next in the collection, so it's time to try again. The next attempt ended fast with some green algae, but the very next attempt I got all 3 fish and went straight to bed. The search for catfish gave me many more fails, but after I caught it, I got the pike and went to bed. Although it was at this point I realised there is no way at this rate I could get to the midnight squid, spookfish and blobfish before the night market arrives, and I was just going to have to put up with that and figure out something else later. But for now, the hunt must go on. The sunfish was next, and after some mandatory green algae, we managed to catch it, along with the red mullet too. Even more fails later, got us the red herring and the eel, but what came next scared me. The octopus. Personally, this is the most difficult fish to get in the entire game, and what made it even worse is the fact that I'm only fishing level 6, and since I have to have a sonar bobber on instead of a trapper bobber, it makes catching it 1,000 times harder. Being the absolute greedy player ever, I chose to go for the octopus before saving for both the herring and eel I've just caught, and to nobody's surprise, I get a sea jelly, meaning I'll have to start the day over. And one more seaweed later, you won't believe what I did again. Once again, I caught the herring, then the eel, and instead of sleeping, I tried for the octopus again, and got sea jelly. I don't even know why I did this, it was so stupid. This time, I wasn't going to make that same mistake, and chose to sleep straight away after getting both the herring and eel. The best idea was for the octopus to head to Ginger Island, since the potential pool of fish is much better, although it went as expected. And this marked probably the longest grind for a single fish in the entire challenge. One issue that made this harder was my fishing level. Since it wasn't maxed, the bar was much smaller and made getting the octopus much harder. I then came up with a great idea to grind out faster attempts. I would spend the night in a tent on Ginger Island, right next to the water, so every time I reset the day, I would be right there to fish. Little did I know this was completely pointless, as the octopus doesn't even spawn in this body of water, but you know, after I eventually figured that one out, I slept once again on the island, and would do a short walk over to the shore to try and catch it every single day. And after many more fails, I finally caught it. I wasn't going to take any more chances with this fish, and decided to head back home and sleep instantly. The hope was on the horizon. The next 2 fish in the collection is the red snapper and squid, but look what comes next. Seaweed and green algae. So for the first time in this entire challenge, I no longer had to reset every time I caught one. I just became so excited. I cast my rod out to get... Oh, come on! It did take a few more attempts, but I finally had both of them and slept through the night. Of course, that meant the seaweed and green algae were next, and a few sea jellies later, I found one. I shouldn't have really risked it, but I did fish for the green algae, hoping to not come across a river jelly, and luckily I did. At this point, however, I had ran quite low on magic bait, and had to take Danger in the Deep from Mr. Key in order to afford some more. And by the 18th, I had made it to floor 120 once again, and claimed 50 more key gems. Catching the sea cucumber was nice and easy, especially now the only thing stopping me was each of the jellies, and after buying more magic bait, I caught the super cucumber. The ghost fish followed the next day, followed by white algae, and then the stonefish. The crimson fish was next, and since it's our first legendary, it wasn't going to be easy, especially at our low fishing level. I did hook it a few times, but managed to get away every time. I chose to use my dish of the sea I had been saving to boost our fishing level by 3. And I managed to get it soon after. The anglerfish was next, and is the easiest out of all of the legendaries to get, and proved no trouble at all. On the same day, I could also go for the ice pip, risk free. Same with the lava eel on the summit of the volcano too. I chose the top of the volcano instead of floor 100, since on floors 100 you could also get the cave jelly, and I'm pretty sure you can't get it up here. The next fish in line was the legend, and that was the bigger issue than it seemed. To even hook the legend, you would need to be level 10 fishing, and we aren't close to that. Luckily though, with the help of some fishing buffs, we're able to boost our level to 10. That didn't make it any easier to get, and after many failed attempts, we finally caught it. That was followed nicely by the sandfish and then the scorpion carp. Next in line was the flounder, and of course I got greedy and tried to go for the midnight carp straight after, and ruined it by getting river jelly on 2 occasions. In the end, I just caught the flounder and went straight to bed. The midnight carp caused me no issue the next morning, and the next fish in line was probably the easiest I would ever do, the clam, which is counted through crab pots. And how about we speed this up? Let's tick off a load of fish right now. At this point where we come to a stop. How on earth do I plan on getting the midnight squid, spookfish and blobfish without the night market? Well, it turns out there is a way. Using magic bait in a certain area of the ocean has a chance to catch all 3 of them at any time of the year. That allowed me to get all 3 of them with relative ease. Kind of. The 3 ginger island fish were next, and were all quite easy to get, especially with the only items that could cause us problems being the 3 different jellies. But after the blue discus, that meant we could start finding the jellies, and it started with the river one. And no joke, I spent the next 3 Stardew Valley days and over 40 minutes trying to get a river jelly, but finally on the 14th I found my first one, followed very swiftly by the cave jelly. With only 1 jelly to go, the sea jelly. And judging by how many times I've gotten this over the course of the video, getting this one's gonna be a breeze. Cannot wait. Yep, it took that long. I don't even want to go into it. That left just 1 final fish, the goby. And since we had somehow managed to catch every single fish before it in the collection, there was finally nothing that could ruin the run. 1 final cast, and it was over. The entire fishing collection completed in order. And honestly, that might have been the toughest one yet. And that is the complete in order collection saga. Seeing it all stitched together like this really puts into perspective just how much went into each challenge. Each one had its own unique barriers that we had to overcome, but somehow, collection by collection, we had managed to complete them all. If you made it all the way to the end of the full movie, seriously, I appreciate you sticking around for the entire journey. And has been such a great series to bring to all of you guys. And while this series is officially complete, Stardew Valley always has new ways to make things harder. So if you enjoyed this one, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's next. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.